Hey, what's up everybody? Rob here from Ramp Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to share this Spider-Man artwork with you. And this is a time-lapse out of Procreate, drawing on the iPad Pro, first generation. And yeah, using Procreate, which automatically captures this, which is just freaking awesome. I did some of this on an airplane, some of this in Punta Cana. Shout out to the Dominican Republic. Everybody there was fantastic. It was an amazing trip. But yeah, I actually got to draw some of this, not much, because quite frankly, I was in the tropical area, what you call it, the Dominican, and spending more time having fun and basking in the sun than drawing. But I did a lot of this on the airplane ride there and back. So yeah, and one other thing I do want to make sure to mention is that this is a bit of a tribute to Stan Lee. So in the middle of me drawing this, I got the bad news, the sad news of losing one of the greatest, most iconic individuals in comics, the great Stan Lee, and never got to meet the man, but I feel like he had a huge impact on my life and brought us one of the most amazing characters ever, Spider-Man, my absolute favorite to draw. So you will be missed and you will never be forgotten, Stan Lee. With that, get on to the drawing process. You can see I'm, editing this work quite a bit. I spent an absorbent amount of time on this one. This one took me 20 hours to pencil, ink, and color, all inside of this app. So that's probably a ridiculous amount of time for something like that, but I'm still pretty happy with it. This was actually one of my favorite pieces from 2018. So, you kind of do that where you finish something, look back, and then go, oh, I really enjoyed this one. I really think this one came out a bit better than I hoped, or, sometimes not as good as you hope, things like that. But this one's one of my favorite from last year. And you can see, again, I've edited and changed it quite a bit. So I struggled with this one, and mainly because of the foreshortening. So foreshortening is always a really tricky thing for me to get right, but I love foreshortened shots. I mean, you probably know if you follow the work, you probably see I do a lot of foreshortened shots because I just feel like if I can get that right, maybe the rest will be a bit easier. I feel almost bored when I do something too boring and not coming out towards camera. Uh, but I also got to mix that up because there's a level of storytelling where you can't just do all foreshortened shots. You can't just do all dynamic shots. Even some of them just got to be people sitting there chilling and showing that you can draw a body at rest. And obviously distortion can be fun, and that's what this is. This is a very distorted perception of the character. It can be fun, but it needs that that counterpart of regular storytelling, regular drawing, and non-distortion, so that basically the distortion looks like it jumps off the page. It won't look that way if everything's distorted, I think. But so many different styles out there, so many different versions and interpretations of this stuff. But what I start to do is get to a point here where I'm looking at the background. I think it was right about now, and I'm going, well, it reads, it's okay. It has this 1 point perspective thing going on, but it just didn't feel like it just felt like it could be better. So you'll see I end up ditching the background and redrawing it all together. And I want to make sure I mention a couple things about that because I've been doing something lately that I think might help other artists. I find that when I sketch too much, I'll ultimately land on the right thing because I'm just kind of revisiting the artwork, revisiting the shapes, moving them around until I find what works right or right enough at the moment. And I never let myself get hindered by that idea of like, oh, this leg is just not perfect and I can't get it right. This took 20 hours. So I'll get to a certain point and I'll say, to heck with it. I'm putting this baby to rest. I'm just going to finish it the way it is. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's going to get done and I'm going to move on to the next piece. Now, that's just the way I like to work. So that's up to you and if you want to identify with that. But I think there's a certain point where you just have to complete the work and not keep pitching and throwing it away because, you might not finish the work and you might, just waste a tremendous amount of time. But the thing I've been doing lately that I found that's really helped me with my drawing process is I've been drawing certain things in just ink. And I know it sounds kind of silly, like, whoa, whoop-de-doo, you're just drawing in ink, big deal. Something becomes a little bit more, precious about the line, even though I'm working digitally. Obviously, the ink line and the pencil line are kind of blurred together in that sense because I can just undo or I can erase back even the ink. It doesn't matter. But I try to think of it like I'm inking on paper. So you'll see I start doing that with the background. So I got the artwork to get the way that I wanted to with Spidey, or get it to the level I wanted to with Spidey, but it still felt like took way too long trying to get him to the pose I wanted to. So now I'm blue lining it and I'm inking it, and that's all a lot easier because I've already got the groundwork laid in. But you'll see when I get to the background, I immediately just go to that ink method I'm telling you about. And what I like about that is since you're trying to like immediately put down the idea with the least amount of lines or the most permanent thought process of lines, ink, it basically forces you to make different decisions, I think. Or maybe not, maybe force isn't the right word. It encourages you to make different decisions. So I really recommend that because I've been doing it more and more. I've been doing it with all my thumbnail sketching. And it's weird because I remember doing this back in the day. Like when I did my thumbnails way back when I would draw on paper and Bristol board, like way back because I don't draw on paper as much anymore. I always did my thumbnails with an ink pen and small sheets of paper. I just the way I did the entire page. I would lay it all out like that. I did it with an ink pen because I didn't want to get caught up in trying to erase and perfect things. And yeah, I really recommend it. Another good way to do it is take a large Sharpie and then a small Sharpie. So they got the fine point. Start with either one, I guess, but use those two exclusively and then draw out a bunch of different scenarios, faces, scenes. Try to emulate whatever you would do with just those two and no pre-sketching. And I'll tell you, it teaches you a lot. So there's, obviously just a lot of different things you can employ, but those are some of the techniques that I've been using lately. And I feel like it's really helped my drawing process, and it's even really helped draw it digitally like this. Like I said, even though the ink line and the pencil line is pretty much the same because you can undo and, erase back the ink. So yeah, so here's where I start thinking, man, this shot's just too boring. I like the pose, but the background here is just boring. So this is where I start inking the line. And you see it allows me to fly through these different concepts really quickly and, ultimately settle on a 3-point perspective where we're looking up at the character. So now what it gives us the feeling of is that we're looking up at our background, but he's now coming downward towards us, towards the viewpoint or camera. So again, this is that ink process I told you about, and I do feel like it really helped me fly through that perspective thought process and get to a scene that I, ultimately say, I like this, I can work with this. And then I switch back to pencil, I think. I can't even remember now, but I think I'm still kind of inking the lines, but inking and erasing. So basically using my eraser set to the same ink pen and erasing back lines. And then I try to draw some little birds, but then I remember I'm no good at drawing birds. So that's something else I need to study. That's always fun too, is when you try to draw something new and you're like, oh goodness, I just realized I don't know what I'm doing and I'm out of my element. But that's kind of the neat thing about exploration within your own art is you quickly realize what you need to study next. So I always think it's strange when artists will contact me now and they'll say, Rob, I want to get better at drawing. I want to, improve things. Where do I start? What do I do? I'm like, well, you kind of need to look at your own art, so or they won't even send me a piece of their art. And then once they do, I can generally figure it out pretty quick. But it's like, you kind of need to do that self-exploration. Like, what do you feel like you struggle with? Like for me, realizing that hand looks weird and even the foot. So I know that I need to work on those areas. Leg anatomy, I always seem to skew that a little bit, so I got to work on that. So I kind of make this, list without always writing it down, I guess. But the funny thing is, it will occur to me. So like when I'm studying reference or I go to sketch, I'm like, man, I really got to figure out the way I want to make legs look for the characters. So in a certain pose, like I might have, 10, 15 different poses I can draw just without thinking about it, but there might be one specific pose that throws me off, so then I have to restudy that. So again, I think it's funny when people ask that question because it's like, look at your art. Where do you struggle, and then where do you excel? Like, what part do you draw through and it's just like easy? You just like, oh, I got this, and you fly right through it. Obviously, you might not need to study that area nearly as much. But then what part do you get to and you start shifting the pose? You start going, well, maybe instead of this, I draw that. Bam. That's the trouble spot. That's the area you got to work on next. So, but I know when you're young and as an artist, you're just looking for somebody to tell you. It's a lot easier. I'm an instructor. Like, hey, what should I work on? Like with my online classes, it makes a lot of sense because that's what they're there for. They're there to learn. I almost find it more strange on YouTube, even though I know everybody's here to learn as well. But it's like, didn't you type something in the search engine, or I guess maybe did you just come to the channel and start watching, and then ideas started presenting themselves. But generally, you need your focus first. So like you go in there and you say, today I'm just going to study. Perspective, or I'm just going to study 3-point perspective. And then you search that and you look at images, you break them down, and you build them back up with your own style. That's kind of the process I take to everything, and it doesn't always enlighten me. Sometimes I got to open up the textbooks and I got to read, and I got to find something. It's kind of the way I look at like cleaning your room, cleaning your studio, wherever you're at. And so, you ever notice, like, if you're an absolute mess like I am, you get stuff just scattered everywhere, you're busy, you're trying to create and stay inspired, and then you need something, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and you got to find this one thing. We'll say it's a, technical pen, whatever it is. So you start digging and looking and searching, and what happens every time you find 5 other things that were useful in the process? At least this is what happens for me, and maybe it's because I am an absolute mess, but I find 5 other things as I'm searching for that one thing. And I'm like, wow, I needed this last time I was searching for it. And maybe I went out and bought a new one or something. But so that's kind of the way that art works in a sense. Like you're exploring, you're tripping over all these things that you need to be studying. And then you go after the one thing, you find your focus, and you go after that one thing, and you hit it hard. But then through that process, you generally will find other things. So like when working on shoulder anatomy, it's pretty easy to start figuring out the chest, even though you're not specifically studying that, but they're interconnected, so it makes sense. And that's just a really quick representation. There's a lot more to that. So you just basically find your focus, find that thing you're lacking at, hit it hard, study it. Some other doors will open as you work diligently through that. So, but yeah, that'll bring this one to a close. I know I went on a few tangents there, but it's like kind of what you have to do with a 13-minute video here. So I'd love to know what you think. And also, we're coming up to the 100,000 subscriber mark. So I want to thank everybody for that. We got some more videos coming out to celebrate that milestone. And as always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.